The amount of energy a country consumes is often a good indicator of how the economy is doing. And in that sense, is good news for India because our electricity consumption has gone up to an extent that we are now facing a coal shortage like many other nations in the world. Recently on the India development debate, we spoke about the coal shortage fueling a power crisis in China. We're not there yet as far as India is concerned, but we are beginning to see a fairly worrying trend as far as the supply of coal is concerned. So for example, India's 72 coal-fueled power projects now have less than 3 days of stock. About 50 plants have stocks ranging from 4 to 10 days. And you have another 13 projects with stocks of coal, supplies of coal for just a little over 10 days. All of this is as of 1st October and are figures that have come from the Power Ministry. What it's telling us is that our coal stocks are running pretty low, lower than we would have liked. On the other hand, the prices of coal the world over are becoming more and more expensive because of a demand coming from every quarter. So for example, Indonesian coal, which we largely import, has seen its prices going up from $60 a ton to $200 a ton. What exactly is the scope of this crisis and how can we overcome it? To speak on this, I have some veterans of the industry on the show this evening. Alok Perti, former Coal Secretary, is joining us. I'm speaking to Mr. Partha Bhattacharya, former Chairman of Coal India, and Debasish Mishra of Deloitte comes back to speak on the energy crisis. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for speaking with us this evening. Mr. Bhattacharya, let me just begin by getting your overview on what we're seeing right now. Is this a worrying trend as far as you can see, or do you think this is a crisis which will not last too long?
See, if you look at the trend of coal production and offtake over the last 3 years, it has remained flat. 2018, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, all have been flat. This year, we are seeing a difference. Now, the difference is in this particular quarter, particularly the previous quarter rather, there's been a surge in power demand and thermal power stations were running at better PLFs. And as a result, the coal demand picked up. I see this as a very transient and transitional kind of a thing. Definitely the production will catch up. Now, you see, if in a situation where for 3 years the coal production and offtake is flat, the company naturally, has to spend its resources judiciously in building up capacity to produce more. And coal is not something that can be produced just by putting a switch on or off. See, it takes a little time, takes some planning to, step up coal production. But the company, Coal India mainly, is taking the right kind of steps. And I don't think that this is going to be too big a problem over the next few months. Because first half of every year, the production breakup is roughly about 45% in first half and 55% in the second half. Particularly the first quarter was affected by COVID second half. And there was a lot of COVID cases in Coal India and the company lost quite a few lives actually among the work. So naturally, those are big challenges. Coming out of those challenges in the second quarter, the company tried to do better, but then again, rains and flooding of open cast mines has been a lot of flooding has taken place. The rains have been, particularly on the eastern side, there has been a lot of rains this time. One particular company is now, most of the mines are closed just because every mine is inundated and flooded. So that kind of a situation, it is struggling. I mean, these are challenges that comes in coal mining every time. But your H2 is always better because now we are going to see better times. The rains are going to be off our head. And we'll definitely see an improvement in quarter 3 and quarter 4 is always better. So I don't think the problem will continue beyond, let us say, November or so. And we should be having ample coal to meet the requirement. And, we produced last year, we produced the same level as 2 previous years, around 600 million tons. And with that kind of a production, we ended up at a year-end stock of 100 million tons, which was a record stock. We have drawn down those stocks. The stocks will again get built up. It will not go up to 100 million tons, but it may go up to something like 60, 70 million tons. Rest may be consumed. So I don't see this problem to be a very major problem that will persist for a long period of time. Unlike China or something, we are not going to face that kind of outages. And the company is gearing itself up. is already geared up.
Okay.
There is already a growth reported in production, and
Sure.
I'm sure this is going to be tackled.
So, Mr. Perti, do you agree with the outlook that Mr. Bhattacharya has, that you think this is a transient problem? And let's take a couple of steps back and look at how we reached here. Is this also because coal stocks were depleted, production was less in the overhang of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the sudden spurt in activity which we've seen post-second wave and post-vaccination rates picking up was something which wasn't necessarily accounted for?
Well, let me say to begin with that the pattern of production over the year, the 12 months of the year, is somewhat what Mr. Bhattacharya explained. This is a normal kind of thing that goes on in the coal industry in India. That the first half is generally weak, low, and the second half is where the weather improves and the consumption and the requirement goes up. We start producing more. Now, there is no denying the fact that the pandemic had its impact, and I quite agree that the pandemic did result in stop or reducing the intensity of the production, but at the same time there was an impact on the power side as well. See, industry is closed, power reduction, though of course domestic power requirements still remained quite okay, quite good. But now we have suddenly started seeing a domestic power coming back, industrial requirement going up. So there is a sense of shortage. Now, if you go by the normal trends that take place, that is, you start seeing production picking up in the months of October, November, December. In that sense, yes, this looks transient. But there is one factor which is going to be very more troubling, and that is the import. You see, we do not rely 100% on the domestic coal. When you talk of 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days coal availability at the power plants, this has been going up and down on several occasions. It's not something very new. And if you go into a little more deep into which are these plants that have 3 days, 4 days, you'll realize the history behind this is that they've always had low stocks. It's not that they always, that this is something very special. There is a distribution problem that goes on. But coming back to the main issue which I was trying to say is more troubling is the cost of imported coal. You see, we do need imported coal to some extent to run the plants. We don't have all the coal that we have. Now, there may be an occasion where the import may drop because of high prices. Because the power plants have already got their PPAs worked out. And the cost of power at which they are supplying is somewhat predetermined for them. To run power plants with very high cost coal at the same price may not be that. They may keep the PLFs low just because they don't want to use imported coal. This could be a bit of a problem. But I see that unless and until coal production is ramped up, and there is a substitution to some extent of the import that is there, there may be a slight crisis that we may still continue to see for some time. This is my reaction to what...
Debasish, let's bring it down to... Yes. Debasish, let's bring it down to the basics. At the end of the day, is there a situation where we might find A, power cuts in some areas if the coal shortage persists? B, would we find final tariffs going up? Because if there has to be a dependence on imported coal, which the world is now vying for, it seems likely that those prices will be passed on.
Yeah, so let's take one by one. As Mr. Bhattacharya mentioned, it is seasonal. During the monsoon months, the production is go down. But if you look at the numbers for the first 6 months, Coal India would have done 240 million tons of production this year. To put it in context, of course, last year was a COVID year, so the base was low. It's 4% more than last year, similar 6 months production, and 11% more than the 2019 similar 6 months normal year. So it's not that used any less. As we were discussing in the last discussion around the coal crisis in China, globally, as the vaccination is improving, the demand is coming back, and as the economic activities are picking up, the electricity demand is ahead of it's at least 300-400 basis point more economic activities. So Indian power is growing at the rate of almost 13% corresponding to last year. So there is a jump in that demand, and what has happened is the electricity boards or the generating company, the state-owned generating companies, usually the Central Electricity Authority requires them to store 22 days of coal stocks. But because the previous year was a pandemic year, and as Mr. Perti was mentioning, the commercial demand went down, their revenues went down. They didn't have the financial ability. The major states like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, those SEBs and their state-run power plants, they haven't kept kind of a stock. So I would say that the situation is grim in terms of amount of number of days, but it's a usual situation. As the is receding from most eastern states, the coal production pick up. As Mr. Bhattacharya rightly mentioned, we are in a situation where
one minute, Debasish, let me come in on that. Just give me a second. You've mentioned, and Mr. Bhattacharya has mentioned that this is a seasonal thing, and of course we know this, that in the rainy season, coal production reduces because of logistical issues. The mines get flooded, etc. We see this every year, and then it picks up later. We've had heavier rains in some parts as well. But do you put this down to the usual temporary seasonal kind of a shortage which will bounce back, or are you looking at this in a broader context of a post-COVID recovery and post-COVID bounce back, also made worse with a situation which is echoing in neighboring countries as well? They are also facing a shortage. They also are vying for the same stock of imported coal.
Yeah, that's the thing what globally people are perfect storm. So it's a perfect storm because it's not only restricted to India. As we were discussing last time also, there is a gas crisis in the Europe. The spot gas prices have gone through. Hence, the spot power prices have gone through the roof in UK and other places. Last time we discussed China, what is happening. And you were just mentioning in your opening remark that the Indonesia has gone from $60 to $200. As Mr. Perti was mentioning, it doesn't make sense for power producers to import coal, thermal coal with 5,000 kcal per kg and at $200 and sell it, which pays you 4-5 rupees. So it's not only a seasonal factor added to a sudden spurt in power demand. Plus the coal, because of the situation, the power plants not having stored enough coal as per the norm, which is the 22 days, and the international coal prices being at such a high level, again, the additional complications. So that's how the situation has come to a stage where we are calling it a perfect storm.
Okay. Right. No, but let's come back to the question that I was asking Debasish, and let me come to Mr. Perti on this. Two parts. Are we going to see either an increase in tariffs? Will we have to go in that direction? Or will we see maybe some kind of a cutback in terms of power cuts?
I think you're going to see both, if you ask me. Why I'm saying this is that the companies that are getting or selling power on a pass-through basis are basically the government companies, NTPC and the like. They are there. Now, if they have to import even 10% or 5% of their requirement, the price of power is going to increase. That is what they will be selling because it's a pass-through. As far as the other power producers are concerned, who are not linked with long-term PPAs on the basis of pass-through prices, which are the private producers, IPPs, they will resist importing because, as Debasish very correctly says, if you are producing power with 5,500 kcal coal at $60 a ton, and you have to pay $200 for that, 4 times the price would not make it economical for them to send power at the same price. So they will tend to suppress production and sell coal only on the basis of sell power on the basis of coal produced from the domestic coal. That would get them some amount of benefit, but then they would be running at low capacity. So one can see that when it comes to government companies who are getting the benefit of a pass-through, the price of, if they are using imported coal, apart from that, I think there's already an announcement by Coal India, if I'm not wrong, and a perception that they're going to increase the prices by 11%. So domestic coal prices also are likely to go up. So we can see a surge in the cost of power. But if the IPPs are resistant on importing to make up for the loss, then there is going to be a low production, which may lead to some amount of power cuts in some regions of the country. I think that could happen. I don't
Mr.
know
Bhattacharya, I want your view on these two aspects, because at the end of the day, that's... Yes, I'm going to him. I'm going to him on that. I want your view on these two aspects, because remember, this is coming at a time when demand is only increasing. We are at that stage of economic recovery where we're seeing a huge rev up, and the demand will of course follow, including for electricity. Do you see any of these situations emerging, which is a hike in tariffs or some cuts?
You see, in my opinion, there are a couple of complexities in this. We can't straight away jump to any conclusion, because there is another factor which is coming in, which was not there 6 or 7 years back, and that is the renewable power, the growth in the renewable power capacity. We are standing today at 100 gigawatt of capacity. It was not there 3 years back. It was possibly somewhere around 40-50 gigawatts. So that additional power capacity that has been added, that's also going to deliver, isn't it? And normally, the growth that we have seen in the overall power consumption varied between 5 to 6% in normal years. And that is more or less matching with the additional renewable power that is getting into the system. So overall, the fact that coal demand and offtake didn't increase for the last 3 years is not without a reason. The reason is that it has been partly nullified by the growth in renewable power. So that process is going to continue, because as we all know, I mean, the target is to reach a much big higher level. I mean, accelerated rate of capacity addition in the renewable sector is going to happen. And we are going to reach somewhere around 450 gigawatt by another 9 to 10 years time. So at that pace, I feel that a lot of supplementary, a lot of complementation will happen from the renewable power sector as well. So the things may not be as critical as we are now seeing. This phase will pass out. This is because of a culmination of various factors. A, the COVID problem. Second, the flooding of the mines. So coal production has been at a much lower rate, and that will definitely change over a period of time, over the next few months. And normally, whatever may be the demand in electricity, we have seen that in Q4, power stations are flooded with coal. I mean, and railways also gear up themselves, and with a little bit of effort. Rather, I would not say only the Q4. Normally, from December onwards, things turn much better, provided we don't see any major change in the COVID situation. Hopefully, if the COVID situation remains what it is today. Pardon?
Well, that the caveat to everything every aspect right now in
Yeah.
any sector, and actually in pretty much most conversations
Absolutely.
I have, is that we hope the third wave doesn't come. But I want to, if you will allow me, I want to take one point forward with a question to Debashish. The question about where we stand as far as our renewable energy plan goes. It comes into focus right now. This is the test, isn't it? Have we ramped up enough to deal with a crisis or a shortage like we're currently seeing? And how much longer will it take for us to reduce our dependence on coal, which is the stated objective since decades, I would say?
Yeah, but the challenge is that although Mr. Bhattacharya mentioned we have 100 gigawatt of renewable capacity today, but it still in energy terms, it contributes around 11% of our energy, and it is intermittent in nature. It's just that, when the demand is peaking, you may not have the sun shining or the wind blowing. The good thing is, this year there has been a late monsoon, and probably, we don't probably the data, but my gut feel is that the dams are full. So even the hydro will contribute, to the, on the supply side. And hydro contributing from November, December, this period onwards, it will supplement the wind and solar. And compared to last year, it was a bad wind season. What I'm hearing is that this year we have a good wind season. So renewable definitely is supplementing. In a normal year, if the demand was growing at around 5-6%, as Mr. Bhattacharya mentioned, incrementally going forward, the additional demand met from renewable. But on the base load, we are still 74-75% dependent on coal. So in an extraordinary year where the demand is growing at 13%, renewables simply by nature, it can't match. Till you still have, you haven't found economical solution for storage. Till that time, we have to have base load as coal. So that's the challenge.
All right. So the challenge for improving renewable energy as an option for coal has only increased. We need to do it quickly, and we can only hope that this shortage does not linger and hamper in any way the economic revival that we are experiencing. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on